Module 6, Nutrition and Competition Tips. Proper nutrition for youth. A really good place to start teaching about proper nutrition is to actually ask your athletes to name 2 to 3 ways that they demonstrate good nutritional skills currently. After they list some of the positives, similar to the 2+2 positive coaching, ask them for maybe 1 to 2 areas that they can work on to improve their daily nutritional habits. This way the ideas come from the young people and it's not an adult telling them what to do. Once you've talked about the positive things they do and then they've come up with 1 or 2 areas they can improve, it gives you kind of a format so that you can answer any questions that they may have about nutrition as well. You'll be surprised. I think a lot of kids will actually ask you a lot of questions that maybe they've been wanting to know, but maybe they were too scared because you have that title coach in front of your name. So start the conversation and see where it takes you. Now we'll get into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts on nutrition facts. Proper nutrition and what it does for our youth athletes. 1, it improves their performance. It reduces fatigue, helps optimize recovery, increases power and speed, improves focus, helps heal and repair injuries, prevents cramping. There are so many good things that proper nutrition does for us, but how do we really get that good nutrition into our kids, and how do we make it a habit? Well, let's talk about some of those ways. The basics. Number 1, we need to make sure that kids understand how to fuel their tank and keep that tank as full as possible, as often as possible. You can understand that if all of a sudden that gauge goes to E because our kids haven't eaten in 2 or 3 days, or they haven't taken in water for a couple of days, you can see once that gas tank goes to empty, you're just not going to get the performance out of your athlete. So we need to make sure that their fuel tanks are full, that they make quality choices, and that there's a balance in what they eat, that there is an important part to when they eat and how regularly they eat. How hydrated they are at all times is one of the most crucial parts of the nutritional plan for kids. And then we're going to talk a little bit about supplements as well. So let's start with fuel your tank. We fuel the tank to meet our daily energy needs. The average human spends about 2,000 calories a day just in normal body function, keeping their heart beating, using a lot of that energy for their brain, for their lungs, for breathing and respiration, processing the calories that we eat. So there's so many things that our body demands each day, and roughly 2,000 calories each day goes to just those bodily functions. So if we're going to wrestle a 2-hour wrestling practice, or we're going to be at a competition where we wrestle 3, 4, 5, 6 matches in a day, we need to make sure we have the calories to support the energy that we're expending. Adolescent athlete energy needs are actually higher than normal recommendations. If a normal recommendation for your athlete based on their height and their desired weight class, say that was a 2,000 calorie a day diet, an adolescent athlete might actually need 2,200 or 2,400 calories in order to meet those energy needs. We want to make sure that our kids get foods that are strong with calcium and vitamin D for bone growth and development. We want to make sure that we find foods for our kids that have iron to help transport oxygen to the muscles. Lean red meats are a really good source of that. And we want to make sure that our kids get foods with magnesium and zinc and vitamin B6 to help support growth. These would be foods like whole grains, dairy, beans, nuts, and leafy greens. The most important thing you can do to help your athlete with nutrition is to ensure that they get the proper amount of calories each day. Not enough calories? What's going to happen? You'll see the athlete is going to be tired with very little energy. Their legs may be heavy, and what they thought might be a fast pace on a sprint or even in a match might seem a lot slower to them when they watch it on videotape because those legs feel heavy. Could be a loss of speed and strength, losing weight beyond what we want to consider losing weight when we're managing for a weight class. And it can be moody. And I'm sure a lot of parents, if you've ever had your kids try to cut weight by starving or dehydrating themselves, it certainly can be a moody household with those kids. We don't need that. We can make our sport better and make our kids better by just letting them experience the sport at early ages, completely at their own pace. What could be the long-term effects of bad nutrition? It could actually lower the metabolism of your child so that as they become an adult, it could be harder for them to keep off excess weight. It can reduce muscle. So your kids have been lifting weights, maybe you're even paying for a personal trainer to help them with strength training, but all of a sudden they're going to lose muscle because they're not eating right. So it doesn't make any sense to try to do all this weightlifting, but then not give the kids the calories that they need to maintain that mass. It can reduce the immune system. Again, bad nutrition over time can mean that your kids may get sick more often. You'll notice that it can be easy to fatigue, which means that even if they're eating a proper diet years later, they might fatigue quicker than they would have had they had better nutrition at a younger age. It could also have an effect with hormonal imbalance, maybe that stunts their growth. A lot of different negatives to not having proper nutrition, including poor cognitive function. Again, we said the brain takes up a massive amount of the calories we need each day. So if our kids don't eat food, they're not going to be able to think properly. And over long term, that could be a severe problem. And it also could lead an increased susceptibility to things like injuries, heat illness, or even concussions. The next key for proper nutrition are quality choices and balanced diets. So what should kids eat? Let's take a look. Here's a great chart, and you can see maybe it's just the size for lean protein and muscle building foods. It might only be the size of the palm of our hand, would be in the upper right-hand corner of this chart. On the left-hand corner, upper left-hand corner, you can see it's a fistful size. So you could say for fruits and vegetables, which help boost your immune system, they fight inflammation and they can improve your recovery. You need a fistful of fruit and vegetables for each meal. And you can see here the recommendation would be a fistful would equal 1 serving of fruit and a fistful would equal 2 servings of a vegetable. So just having a fistful of each of those can give your kids just kind of an idea of what they should eat, whether that's at home when you're helping them prepare the meal or if they're away at school or at a camp, making sure that they get the right dosage of each type of food. And balance is key. So if your athlete uses a training log to write down the daily calories that they take in and how many they burn, they're going to be able to calculate what types of foods and how much of it they can actually eat each day. They can do the same thing with hydration, and over time, kids really do find out what works best for them. As easy as reading the ingredients, the quality of foods that we eat is so important. You can see here, as opposed to actually eating a strawberry or mixing a strawberry into something that you want to taste like strawberries, this is an artificial strawberry flavor. I can't even pronounce 90% of the words on this ingredient list, so why would we want to take these toxins and absorb them into our body? Athletes can eat more food by volume of healthy food options, which will actually help satisfy their hunger cravings and reduce binge eating. So what we want to do is make sure that the athlete eats a larger volume of a healthier low-calorie food, which satisfies those cravings and again reduces that need to just eat everything in sight after they make weight. Here's a list of some harmful foods and a list of some performance foods. Take a few seconds and look through both lists and see if there's anything that's on your diet that maybe you should try to eliminate, or maybe something on the other diet that you can add. That's great. We can do the exact same thing with this chart with our kids. This video will always be under the Educational Resources tab on themat.com, so anytime you want to come back and take the copper course again or just look at one particular section, maybe like this nutrition section, you'll be able to come back and access this course for free, so feel free to show it to your kids as well. It doesn't count for certification when they take it through our educational resource link, but it gets the information where it needs to go, and that's extremely important. Let's keep healthy foods in your home and make them easy to access. And let's take the harmful foods and either make them hard to access or just get rid of them from your home completely. A good friend of mine brought over a party-sized bag of M&Ms, and when they were out on the counter, it was really easy to just grab a handful, and they were disappearing pretty quick. But once I put them into the pantry on a bottom shelf in the back corner, they sat there and I didn't eat them as fast. So just some really basic tips like this can not only help our athletes' nutrition, but it can help us make better choices as well. And does it really matter what I eat? Absolutely. Foods affect things like your muscles' recovery and the ability to gain muscle, your ability to concentrate, which could affect both sports and school. It can affect your overall energy levels, determine if needed nutrients are actually absorbed by your body or just passed through. And the weight of food does not contribute to your long-term body weight. Body weight is actually determined by the calorie content of the food and not the weight of the food. So again, if I'm eating on a Friday night and I have to weigh in Saturday morning, that would be an issue where we want to look at the weight of the food. But on a Tuesday or a Wednesday or even a Thursday, the weight of the food means a lot less than the number of calories that are in it and the types of calories that are in it. The next thing we want to talk about for proper nutrition for youth athletes is the timing of the meals. It's important that we avoid skipping meals because that can slow down our metabolism. Eating at regular intervals is very important for building muscle. We actually don't build muscle by lifting weights. We tear our muscles down by doing the lift. The muscles rebuild themselves during rest, which is when we increase our strength. So that recovery is an important part of how we train. The bulk of calories should be consumed by mid-afternoon. The earlier in the day we absorb those calories, the more we burn them, the more they increase that metabolism. If we eat right before bed, those calories can sometimes sit, and even good calories can get changed to fat in the evening hours. That's why we want to avoid eating late at night. And we should have athletes pack a snack so that within 45 minutes at the beginning of practice, they're actually able to start a little bit of a pre-fuel. And then within 45 minutes after a practice, we want to make sure they can resupply. And we'll talk about some different food types that are really good for recovery. But again, it's very important, 45 minutes before practice and within 45 minutes after practice, we want to get those calories in. So 1, we have calories to draw on during practice, and 2, we can resupply the calories we expended during practice and make sure that our body gets the rest and recovery it needs. Consuming carbohydrate and protein during the early phases of recovery has been shown to positively affect subsequent exercise performance, and it could be of significant benefit for athletes involved in multiple training or competition sessions on the same or consecutive days. That means for people who are training at an elite level, and most all of our wrestlers are, we need to focus on that recovery eating. Basically, what does that mean? Eat within 30 to 45 minutes of finishing your training. So what would an ideal sample diet for a wrestler look like? Let's take a look at a sample breakfast. Start with a bowl of cereal, and not a sugary kid's cereal, just a good healthy bowl of cereal. Look at the ingredients. Have some Greek yogurt, maybe a couple of pieces of fruit, and then mix in some water or milk or 100% real juice. And not a juice drink. Be very careful when you look at the ingredients on juices. Make sure that it's 100% real juice. Sample lunch. You'd have a sandwich made out of a whole grain. Not necessarily whole wheat, but a whole grain. Whole wheat bread means that all of the ingredients are wheat. Whole grain means they use the entire part of the grain. So whole wheat bread is not as healthy as whole grain bread. So we would want a sandwich with that whole grain, lean meats, and some veggies. They could have an apple or some other type of a snack, maybe a granola bar, and then they could have milk or water. We would want to avoid sports drinks like the Gatorades and the Powerades for meals. Those are going to be better recoveries and during practice type drinks. Here's a sample afternoon snack, just a pre-practice, about 45 minutes prior to practice. What would we want our athlete to eat? We'd want them to have something like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It can be very simple and easy. They could keep that in a lunchbox, or they could keep it in their gym bag for the day and break that out and be able to have a nice snack 45 minutes before practice starts. Maybe some trail mix, maybe some fruit or a granola bar. Here's what a sample plate might look like. So for a dinner, 1 plate of food, mostly veggies and proteins, as you can kind of see as it goes around. And here's the key for that post-workout fueling. That timeline, again, within 45 minutes after training, we would want to have a protein-carbohydrate mix. Typically, this can come in a fluid form, something like a chocolate milk, or even some of the sports drinks that are designed specifically for recovery. But what you want is you want the carbohydrate content to be at least 2 times the protein content. So if you can find a recovery drink that has 30 grams of carbohydrate and 15 grams of protein, then the body will actually absorb those calories in quicker because of that 2-to-1 carbohydrate to protein ratio. So that's an important thing you look for when you look for these recovery drinks. And we can't talk about proper nutrition without talking about the importance of hydration. Remember, you can only live 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, or 3 weeks without food. So hydration is extremely important. And did you know that athletes lose up to 9 times more sodium than potassium in sweat? Sports drinks can be good training, but not as good when we use them with a snack or a meal. And dehydration will always hinder your athlete's performance. I can't say that enough. If you think that having your athlete dehydrate to make a lower weight will help their performance, it won't. It will always hinder their performance. And that may mean that they still win because they're a little bigger at that lower weight class, but it will always make them perform less optimally than when they're hydrated. That's why we want our youth athletes to focus on wrestling close to that natural body weight so that when they compete, they can be hydrated, they can have healthy meals, they can compete at their best. And by competing at their best, we can see what areas they may need to work on or what areas they're excelling at. So when we dehydrate or reduce calories for our kids, we are definitely hindering their long-term performance. What are the causes of dehydration? What will we notice when an athlete is dehydrated? We'll see again that they fatigue quickly. They may get cotton mouth or dry mouth. So if you hear kids and you hear that chomping where it's almost like they're trying to suck moisture out of their own mouth, that would be the cotton mouth or that dry mouth caused by dehydration. They may have that inability to focus. So if your kids are not really paying attention, and typically they do, that could be a sign of dehydration. They may have a reduced appetite, and they're just not so hungry, even though they should be hungry based on how many calories they've been burning. And certainly a decrease in performance. Maybe they didn't beat an athlete that they had kind of dominated a week before. Certainly that decrease in performance could be because of a lack of hydration. You can also notice cramping, abdominal cramping, cramping in the ribs, the legs. You might also notice dizziness. If they become dizzy, again, get them to a safe place, let them slowly rehydrate, and get them back to full health, and maybe consider taking the rest of the day off. Shaking and nausea can also be symptoms of dehydration. So if we notice these issues, again, try to rehydrate the athlete. And if you really feel it's a dire case, consider medical attention. Research shows that good hydrators will practice at higher intensities, be more focused, and have improved performance compared to non-hydrators. Make your athlete a hydrator today. How do I know if I'm becoming dehydrated? As a coach or a parent, it's important that your kids understand how they can determine when they may be becoming dehydrated. Here's a check your pee chart. Basically, if urine is at a 4 or higher on this scale, 1.5 hours before activity, you're dehydrated. So you can see that a 4, that's a pretty yellow looking pee. So that's when dehydration is really starting. We want our pee to look like almost kind of like a lemonade-y kind of color. And And again, as it starts to get darker and darker through that matrix, we're becoming more and more dehydrated. So if you can teach kids how to check their own hydration, as they notice the urine becoming darker, they can start to increase the amount of water that they drink so that we know that we can give them a lifelong skill of monitoring their hydration. And you know, of all of the symptoms that dehydration can cause, we can help our kids reduce those symptoms for life if we teach them to check their own urine. And a lot of coaches and athletes now will post this urine chart in a bathroom by a urinal. So as they pee, they'll see the urine chart. They can quickly assess their level of hydration and make any changes needed. And when we talk about supplements, supplements are a big question that a lot of parents and athletes have, but it's extremely important to be very, very careful. Is there a place for supplements in athletic competition? There is. Is it the type of supplements that we usually see advertised? Absolutely not. So let's talk a little bit about that. Food is always the foundation for healthy eating. If for some reason we feel we need to substitute a good food diet for something that is completely artificial, we need to talk to somebody like a nutritionist or a doctor to get more information, because if we're substituting synthetic materials for what is supposed to be the foundation of our diet, we're not doing our bodies justice. Supplements certainly can complement that solid foundation, however. Supplements are not regulated by the FDA. That means the manufacturers can make claims without any scientific proof. So when you see an advertisement and it says, look at this 70-year-old man and how ripped he is, try this product. They can make that claim without any proof at all. And it might just be somebody who's taken very good care of their body. So what we want you to do is, if you look at supplements, make sure that it has the NSF logo. That logo means that it was tested by an independent organization for quality and purity for what's on the label. Let's talk about warm-ups and cool-downs. This is great for both practices and for competitions. There are two types that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about a dynamic warm-up, and we're going to talk about a static warm-up. A dynamic, when you think of something that's very dynamic, you often think that it's with motion, and that's what this warm-up is. It's a dynamic warm-up with motion. And we use that at the beginning of the practice or at the beginning of competitions.
Dynamic stretching is sort of a new term for an old activity. We're moving through a full range of motion by doing some kicks or motions with the arms to stretch through that full motion your body has without bouncing, but without a hold either. It's a great way to start off a sport or start off a practice to really get loosened up. A side shuffle and a karaoke are two ways to loosen up the outside and the inside of the thighs by moving back and forth down the track, and these could also be performed in place or on a soccer field or any other field where you might be playing. A straight leg kick is a great way to stretch the hamstrings and low back by doing a straight kick as far as you can reach without bending your back forward. Butt kicks stretch the front of the leg or the quadriceps to loosen up as you're kicking your heel towards your rear end to get moving through that full motion of the knee. High skips are a good way to stretch both the front and the back of the thigh along with getting the calf moving. An inchworm walk is a good way to stretch the shoulders and the hamstrings and the low back all in one. It's also a great exercise to work on some of the stability of the core, hips, and back.
Now that we've taken a look at a dynamic warm-up for the beginning of practice or beginning of competition, a static would be best used at the end of a competition or at the end of a practice. Again, static means no motion, which is what we think of when we think of a traditional stretch, hold, count to 10. This type of stretching is best executed at the end of a practice or at the end of a competition. Here are a few examples. Here's a goal card. One of our coaches from Wisconsin gave us this idea at one of our silver level coaching clinics where they'd have the athletes fill out what they called a gold card, and we just changed it a little bit here to include some information on the zone of optimal performance as well, kind of calculating when an athlete might be a little bit too high or a little too low in terms of pre-match anxiety and energy. But what's great about these cards, you could fill this card out, the best takedowns, their best moves on top, their best moves on bottom. And if you're unable to coach your athlete for a weekend tournament, maybe you have another child and you have to go participate with them at a different event, and another coach is taking your kid to the tournament, you could give them this goal card, and that coach would know exactly right away what to say from the neutral, top, and bottom position. So trying to improve communication between athletes, coaches, and parents, because you got to think about it. During that competition, your athlete's heart rate is going to reach at least 180 beats per minute. It's going to be a very high level of energy going through them. And so when coaches shout during the match, they always think that it's helping, but most of the time kids can't even hear or understand what's going on, or they're not going to be able to hear it and then turn around and be able to replicate it physically against an opponent who doesn't really want them to do it. So you can see there's a lot of things going on during a match, but these goal cards really can improve communication and help improve the focus for your athlete so that they know their areas of strength and maybe some areas that they need to work on.